Oh, that was a quiet, demure little opening
I
sound this week.
was trying to, keep the spillage to a minimum.
Well, because we all know that Nod Hill likes to fill it up to the tippy top. Well, we
Really,
love that. We love that about Nod Hill. They're generous. They're not stingy.
right.
You get your 100% money's worth going
There.
on in there. Oh, okay. I've got my Facebook open on my other device. Oh, mom and dad are already watching, and Patricia
Oh,
Dunn is watching. Hey, Patricia. Say hi in the chat if you'd like. We are so excited to be back this evening. Last week was so special, wasn't it, Chris? Our 2-year anniversary show.
I still
Wild.
can't believe it. I just have to take your word for it that we've been doing this for years. It's yeah, but it was
Unreal.
a great night. Great folks
Yes.
joining us. A lot of great people tuning in, saying
Mhm.
hi. And here we go into year 3 on this
Yup.
crazy journey. And we've got an awesome show tonight too. So
We absolutely do. We absolutely do, and it's just going to be wonderful. We're very very excited. And you're right. That was our 2-year anniversary show. Was our 89th show. It was actually exactly 2 years from our first show. And at first we were doing our shows on Fridays, and that was a real that was a real godsend during the beginning of the pandemic where when we just couldn't go anywhere at all.
that's
Right.
right.
And like we could go to the grocery store in a mask, but that was about it. And everything was curfewed. It was, we've come really far, and, things are still not over. So everybody, please be safe. But thank you so much for making these past 2 years so much better with writerly community, friends, fans, family members joining us to celebrate each other's books and writing and published works. Oh, hey, Pete Nelson is in the chat. Hey, Pete.
Been a
Do you
while.
see him over there? So good to see you, Pete. Oh, we got a little. Oh, the guy with the wait. Can everybody just take a good gander at Chris's name in here? Oh, you changed it to Chris Belden.
I told you.
Wow. Hey.
I told you.
during the Q&A that'll be up there. Anyways, it was funny earlier this evening, well, this afternoon, we should say, we were at Eco Evolution in South Norwalk for Victoria Boutron's book launch for A Body Across Two Hemispheres, and it was absolutely delightful. Victoria gave an incredible reading. We had a little book signing, and we got to see so many FUMFA peeps, some who have read on here and some who have not read on here yet that we're trying to rope in. So we hope that you're watching, and we hope that you'll be with us. Yes. Oh, what a gorgeous cover too, right? Everybody out there, go get that book. Go get that book. And it's published by our dear friends, Woodhull Press. And it was an absolute delightful time. So also check out the lovely photos that we have that I posted earlier. And so somebody at some point said, "Oh, I recognize you. You're the guy with the beard." On the live
That's
stream, you're
me.
the guy with the beard. So that was Chris's name when he first came into the live stream backstage this evening.
The guy
Um,
with.
yes. Oh,
Oh,
we have an announcement in the chat. Pete Nelson says Travis Baker's play Hockey Mom is currently running in Bangor. Oh, what a wonderful announcement. Thank you, Pete. And Chris Madden and I are going up to see it Saturday. Any Maine people? Any people up in Maine? Go check out Travis Baker's play. Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome, you guys.
I think part of that play may have debuted right here.
Oh, God, it may have. Oh, it
On,
may have.
that's right. I
Listen, we
think
need to get Travis back on here. We need to catch up with him.
yes, we do.
That is so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Pete. He also said, "Thank God the pandemic is over just in time for World War III." Yeah. Oh, God. Oh, please, no.
Yeah.
Anyways, welcome everyone to FUMFA 90. We are getting so close to 100. So close, Chris. Um, And our readers, our guests this evening are special guest Rahla Xenopoulos and FUMFA alum and dear friend of ours, T.E. Hahn or Tommy Hahn. And we just can't wait to hear what they're going to share with us this evening. We can't wait for the Q&A. Just so many interesting things we can ask them about and just catch up with them about. So we're really looking forward to our lovely reading this evening, Rahla Xenopoulos and T.E. Hahn, Tommy Hahn. But Chris, what else do we have coming up soon?
Well, next week, that would be April 10, is our screenwriter night. So we have two screenwriting talents from the FUMFA community, Matt Madden and Michelle Miller, and they're going to share excerpts from the screenplays that they're working on.
It's going to be awesome.
With actors that we'll have here reading the parts. And so that's going to be awesome and and very exciting. And then we're off for Easter. And then we come back on the 24th. And when we come back, we're going to be at 8 o'clock. We're going to be working on our summer hours.
That's right. Give you some more time to have dinner, be out in the sunshine, and see the show.
It's getting so light out, so people be hanging out outside. And anyway, we'll be back on the 24th with Marissa Prada and Mackenzie Herbert. And then from there on, we've got some great people. Tom Siegel. It looks like Jen Boulette. I think we're going to do the LGBTQ.
Yes, very special reading with Jen Boulette.
And we got folks from Spry Lit, Causeway Lit. We're going to come on and talk about publishing. So some great stuff coming up.
We are really excited. And, actually our month of June is already filling up. So if you have a book out or coming out and you would love to be a feature reader on the show, reach out to us. If you would love to participate in any of our upcoming open mics or group readings or theme readings, or if you have a wonderful idea for us, please reach out to us on social media or via email, which is fumfalive@gmail.com. And we would just absolutely love to hear your idea and include you on an upcoming show. We also are so excited because we will have our 100th episode coming up pretty soon. And Chris and I are hoping to read for you again, share what we're doing. And we're also hoping to have an in-person reading or two this summer, perhaps even on Ender's Island. But we'll stay tuned. It's all in the works, and we need to iron out a bunch of details. But we're really excited to keep doing what we're doing right here online, and also to see people in person. If you are not already following us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, make sure that you are. We also have a private, it's a private account, but you are welcome to join. And that's how we connect with specific social events. That's FUMFALive_social. So that's on Instagram and also Facebook. So please connect with us there, and make sure that you come out and that you see us and that you reach out as well. So just so much good stuff going on. We're so thankful that we're able to do what we're doing right now, continue to do what we're doing, and that you are sharing it with us and that you enjoy it, and just hoping to do even more. Chris, we had such a lovely time out at Eco Evolution. Perhaps maybe one day we can have an in-person open mic in South Norwalk, perhaps.
I think that definitely is something we should make happen.
Yes. Oh gosh, that would be so fun. I'm really excited. I'm really pumped about all of that. And it'll be just such a great time. But Chris, have you told the audience what you're drinking yet? Right before we do need to get started, but they need to know.
I mean, it's moved per day from our friends at Knott Hill Brewery.
Yes.
And it's delicious.
It is delicious.
You're drinking.
Oh, I'm drinking a little bit of a concoction tonight. This is a pink lemonade vodka situation over here. It's delicious. And
I think it needs a name. I think it could just be called The Situation.
Situation. I love Situation.
I'm drinking a situation. What are you drinking next?
Yeah. I'm drinking a pink lemonade situation.
Because
I
there are
love it, Chris. I
two
love it.
situations over here at this table. Two situations, right?
Two situations. I love it, Chris. I think that is absolutely perfect. But now we need to welcome our first reader of the evening. Once again, we have with us special guest Rahla Xenopoulos and FUMFA alum T.E. Hahn. And we are going to welcome first Rahla Xenopoulos. Welcome, Rahla.
There she is.
How are you?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, Rahla, can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Rahla?
Oh, no.
We're talking to you, Rahla. Can you hear us? What happened?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Rahla, are you muted within somewhere on your computer? Do you have speakers? It looked like she was very attentive. It didn't seem like she couldn't hear us. Let's see. All right.
Huh.
Okay. Rahla, it looks like Rahla is having some trouble hearing us at the moment. Rahla, it might be good for you to oh no.
What happened?
Oh no, I don't know. Maybe she should leave and re-enter the link. I'm not sure if she can hear us though. Tommy Hahn, are you ready to go? Rahla, we might put you second tonight so that we can sort out your okay. So actually we are okay. Right. So let's sort this out
Private
in
chat.
the chat.
Oh, am I muted?
Yes,
There
you
you
are
are.
muted. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you now. Whew,
Wait.
whew, whew,
And
stressful.
now?
Oh no. Yeah, you're fine now.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I
yes,
can't
yes.
hear you.
Well, that's
Oh, that is strange. Okay. So, you go ahead. We're going to read your bio. Chris, would you mind typing in the private chat?
yes. I'm going to.
Oh, okay.
We will read your bio, and then you will go ahead and read, and then we will figure out how to get you volume for the Q&A. All right, fabulous. I'm going to go ahead and read Rahla's bio. Chris is going to transcribe that into our internal chat, and we will move right along. Okay. All right. Rahla Xenopoulos is an author and mother of triplets. She is the author of A Memoir of Love and Madness from Random House, the novels Bubbles,
Okay.
Tribe, and The Season of Glass. She has published short stories in the anthologies Women Flashing, Twist, Just Keep Breathing, and the Lockdown Collection. She has written for the Sunday Times, Cosmopolitan, Glamour, and Oprah Magazine. Her latest book, The Season of Glass, was a finalist for the Sunday Times Literary Award. Rahla was one of 34 South African women profiled in the Power Within Companion. She gives talks on mental health and empowerment, as well as hosting workshops that focus on health and personal inspiration. She gives writing workshops to underprovided children and is on the board of SA Yes and Short Story Day Africa. Rahla teaches writing in South Africa as well as in Greece and New York, both privately and with the Westport Writers Workshop. She has worked with both experienced writers and novices from all over the world. In an ideal world, Rahla would have a broad mind and a narrow waist, but failing the narrow waist, oh, stop. She'll just settle for the broad mind. Rahla lives in New York with her husband and teenage triplets. What an awesome bio. We have so many questions we're going to ask you in the Q&A. Rahla, we can't wait to hear you read. Take it away.
Hi. Okay, sorry, that was a little bit weird. My screen has gone mute. So I believe you can hear me. I'm going to read from a novel I wrote called Tribe. And the section that I'm going to read to you now is about a woman called Selani, whose parents were very involved in the struggle in the fight against apartheid, and as a result of which her and her brother had to be smuggled out of South Africa and into exile in London. So this particular chapter is about Selani sitting in a coffee shop in London waiting for her best friend, and she sees the man who she thinks rescued her as a child. And in seeing him, she has all these memories and recollections and reflections on that time of her life. So I'm going to begin. Selani steps out of the cold London morning and into the warmth of the bistro. She walks past walls covered in chic photographs and people huddled in conversation about important issues. Online porn, teenage suicide, outrage that the latest Prada range sold out so quickly. As she sits down, fumbling with her coat, mittens, and woolen hat, the contents of her handbag spill onto the floor at her feet. The smiling waiter comes over to help her, as he did the previous Monday and the Monday before that. Usual, miss, or you going to wait for your mate? Nah, thanks, love. I'm hungry now. She's different. Her Tibetan basket is nothing like the Hermes handbags the other women carry. But being there once a week, being privy to their conversations and the food they eat, makes her feel like one of them, the privileged few. Not that Selani's ever needed to fit in anyway, just to enjoy intimate insights. Her phone beeps with a text from Olivia, who's running typically late with the boys and manicures. Selani is rereading old mails, pretending to be as busy as everyone else is pretending to be, when she feels something different to the typical Marylebone Monday morning sense of chaos. Something eerie travels through her. Slowly, she lifts her head and looks across the restaurant at a man sitting alone, not in the corner, but in silent isolation. The pace around his table seems slower, people around him quieter. His absorption in the book he's reading is absolute. Long fingers firmly hold its cover. A moment within a moment sends a ripple through her heart, and suddenly she's back in the mountains of KwaZulu-Natal, listening to her grandmother, her gogo, singing, Senzenani, Senzenani. The sad words soothed her, while her brother Neo, at 10, already embittered by the wisdom of age, turned his back and looked out instead at the endless fields of apartheid. They were waiting, the whole country was waiting, for the fallout of the funeral, of the murder, of it all. It was midnight when the two white men came to take the children away. Neo hid underneath the metal bed, afraid that they were security police. What did he know of white men? Bundled up in scratchy blankets on the back seat of a car, they watched tears traverse down the lines of the old woman's face as she whispered to the men, sing to them, Senzenani, Senzenani e Africa. They listened in silence to the protest song that had been sung by strangers all afternoon at the funeral, sung as a lullaby by their grandmother, and was now warbled clunkily by the young white freedom fighters. They drove through the heat, past moonlit fields of sugarcane and crickets that sounded like an old-fashioned telephone ring. They drove through the night, so hot and humid that if it had been nowadays in London, she would have felt dirty. They drove through an oppressive climate, politically and geographically. Neo held onto his terror, but sometime before dawn, Selani crawled out from under the blankets and timidly looked at the brown-haired man who had been mispronouncing the words and singing out of tune. Every now and then he caught her eye through the rearview mirror as his long fingers tightly gripped the steering wheel. He looked almost as afraid as her, but his smile held and his voice was comforting. The other man, the blonde one, was more handsome and cavalier, and he sang well. He had a ready laugh, and he told the children that everything was going to be lekker. She recalls the shriek of seagulls and Indian miners, and the foreign, comforting smell of hot beef on rye as it was taken out of a tartan picnic basket. Jesus, but I dig your ma. She's gone out to town on the Jew food, said the blonde one. She remembers feeling excluded as her brother joined them while she listened to the sound of men pissing against a tree. She remembers holding in her own wee until her bladder nearly burst, and then he, the one with the brown hair, said, "Yeah, My family go to the Kruger Park, and my sister's the only girl. She makes us wait in the car while she finds a rock to pee behind. Should we do that? We'll wait for you. An argument ensued. The blonde one was more sensible. What if we're being followed by the police? What if she wanders off and we lose her? I'm telling you, but it's mad. Aaron, the one with the blonde brown hair, struck a deal. I'll play a song. Don't go any further than the song. You have to hear music coming from the car. You got it? And make it quick sticks. Nervously, she scuttled to the closest rock, only to find that after holding it in for so long, she was too petrified to weep. She heard Neo laugh, someone opening a can of Coca-Cola, and the words of Bob Marley's song, Three Little Birds. She remembers the discomfort and disappointment of a full bladder when she got back inside the car and listened as Aaron's brown eyes spoke to them as if they were grown-ups. We're cool. No one's following us. They drove far on the dirt roads, drinking Coca-Cola and eating the Jew food, listening to pop songs. She studied his hands on the steering wheel, the reflection in his eyes. And then, suddenly, the car stopped, and they took the children out. God forgive me if anything goes wrong. Aaron looked out at the dusty horizon. Both men seemed suddenly afraid. Zilani thought maybe she and Neo were going to be dumped there in the middle of the field and left to die. Again, it was Aaron who talked. Crouching down, he held their hands and looked into their petrified eyes. You're going to be fine. You're the heroes of the revolution. You're your father's children. But now, just for a little while longer, I need you to behave like real soldiers. The blonde one squashed a tin can and throwing it far into the valley, cursed. Jesus, but do you really think this is the right way? What if it's a trap? The two young men looked at one another. Then Aaron opened the boot. It's going to be dark in there, he said. You have to hide. Don't move. Don't breathe. Pretend you're dead. If they catch us, we'll all die. But they won't. We're cool. She remembers being squashed in the bottom of the boot, beneath heavy woolen blankets and cardboard boxes. So hot and sweaty she couldn't breathe. She mustn't breathe. Then slowly, the crunch of gravel under tires as the car came to a stop and the muffled sound of Afrikaans voices. They were good young men, short back and sides, the type a girl could take home to meet her mother. Afterwards, she listened to them talking. Apparently, the men at the border patrol had liked them, especially the Afrikaans one, who shared castle beer and the telephone numbers of cheap chicks. But that was later, when they were safe, on the other side. Inside the boot, all she could smell was fear. They weren't so tough, those freedom fighters. When they came to the airport, Zilani held onto Aaron, not with the ferocity of a child, but with the ferocity of a freedom fighter. She held his legs and clutched his shirt, wet with sweat and fear. Let me come with you, please. Let me come to the Kruger National Park. I'll wee behind the tree and stay close to the car, to the song, to the little birds. There were so many people, cameras. He crouched down. There now. So she did as she was told, her entire little body clenched up, aching with the effort of not crying. She wanted to be a hero, his hero. He never knew that it wasn't the noble land she dreaded leaving, but him and her grandmother. She didn't want to leave or come back. She wanted to stay within his gaze and eat Jew food and have her grandmother sing, Senzenani, e Africa. She would never see him again. She'd never see either of them, nor the old woman. But then, of course, the old woman wasn't really her grandmother. She was just another freedom fighter with a role to play in the struggle. Zilani arrived in London on a Monday morning and, unlike Neo, the hum of an indistinct song soothed her through childhood. She arrived ready to embrace reggae and the warmth of a coat on an ice-cold day. She grew up loving the smell of hot beef on rye and always falling for Jewish men, especially the ones who deserted her. But then that was the difference between Selani and other people. She got on with it, found a remedy for the heartache of a Monday morning without even knowing that her heart was aching. This morning, Olivia, her best friend's arrival, is preceded by the usual murmur, "Is that Olivia Stone? Isn't she glamorous?" Selani looks up into the comfort of Olivia's Botoxed smile. As ever, she wonders to herself how anything quite so fake can be so sincere. "Sorry, darling, I'm unforgivably late," Olivia announces to the entire restaurant, and the entire restaurant forgives her. Every single person, except him. He remains lost within the blue cover of his book. "What's up, miss?" Olivia asks. "Nothing, I'm working on a garden in North London. Why would these imagine the electricity for all these people? Why would these women need so much marble?" "T, you sound like me, perish the planet." She looks knowingly at Selani. "It's unlike you to bother about other people's carbon footprint. What's really wrong? Selani doesn't care about a bunch of North London women and how they go about destroying the planet. She knows that, and Olivia knows that. It's all there, so vivid. If she can't talk to Olivia, then everything is superficial. It would be so easy to be honest. She could hum the song, describe the airport, or how desperately she needed to wee. She doesn't need to tell the whole story, just say that something's missing or not missing and very much present. There's a memory, and her entire life, everything has fallen suddenly into place, into a wooden chair not more than 6 tables away from theirs. All she needs to do is tell Olivia, and she will go up and introduce herself. He'll be flattered to meet them. But it's Monday, a Marylebone Monday in the middle of an unforgiving winter, and no one has time, not even her and Olivia. So she distractedly makes her way through an insincere breakfast, then regretfully watches Olivia's fawn cashmere coat swan down Devonshire Street into the cold Marylebone world. Checking her watch, she begins to make her way back towards home, defeated. And yet her body resists. Some fibre of her being doesn't let go, and she finds herself stumbling back into the restaurant, bringing with her the unforgiving cold. If he lifts his head, by the time I reach the lady in the red coat, I'll talk to him, she tells herself. The waiter smiles knowingly. "Something fall out of your bag?" "Yes, my phone. If I could come back and look for my cell phone, I must have left it at the table," she says to the black and white marble floor. Just at that moment, the loud ringing of her phone comes from her bag. "Oh, that's my husband's phone. I'm looking for my phone. If you'll excuse me." She turns her back on the waiter and walks towards the man, who still hasn't raised his head. On the floor, she scrounges around people's designer shoes, foolishly willing time to stand still. "My phone, if you'll excuse me. I was sitting here before you and I dropped my phone, my bag. I have a terrible bag. My husband's always telling me to get a new bag. Look at it, everything falls out." People clip their feet closer together and turn their bodies away from her. The waiter, knowing she's nowhere near her regular Monday table, looks at her bewildered. It's useless. He doesn't even move a hand to drink his coffee. And she's behaving like a mad woman, surrounded by these supremely cool people who will soon be rushing off to their Monday London lives. They're not familiar with a land where the heat is so intense that it washes over you and makes time stand still. Never been crazy with fear as they're smuggled out of a hostile country. They're protected by coats and class and cappuccino. She looks at him and realizes he's probably as bewildered by these people as she was when she arrived. Maybe he's just arrived. Maybe he's always been here. If he would only lift his head, she could catch his eye and let him know that it's going to be all right. She stands resolutely and walks forward. The woman in the red coat has finished her croissant and is paying, but still he reads. She recognizes the way his hair falls forward, not from the front of his scalp, but from the middle. She remembers touching his hair as if it was a security blanket. So unusual for hair to grow that way. At the time, she had thought that was the way all white men's hair grew. She feels her throat close up and her head throbs with unshed tears as she takes a step forward toward him and reaches out, almost as if to touch it, the line in the middle of his skull, like a border between two countries. A voice comes from behind her. Is there someone I can call? Perhaps your friend? The waiter's hand gently rests on her shoulder. No, thank you. I must have left it at home after all. One gets so confused on Mondays, doesn't one? She puts her hand in her pocket, feeling the residue of old tissues. I'd better be off. See you next Monday. No, we'll be away. In South Africa. Imagine that, she mumbles to the floor. So I don't know if you heard a word of that.
Yes,
okay,
totally,
that's all I've got there.
Good.
Could you hear me?
Yes. yes. We'll give you instructions in the chat.
She's still muted.
No, we're not muted. So the audience can hear us. I think we'll still need to do a little transcription in the private chat.
Yep.
If you don't mind, Chris. But yeah, you sounded great. Everyone can hear you. We can hear you. Beautiful reading, Rahla. And we're going to give you some instructions in the private chat so that your audio will be all set for the Q&A.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to leave the studio.
Yes, okay. So she's following your instructions.
All right.
Oh, I'm so sorry she was having trouble. None of us were having trouble, but technology gets crazy.
It does. I don't know what happened there, but hopefully the main thing is we could hear her reading.
Yes.
And then when she comes back, hopefully she can hear us as well.
Yes, we will make sure to sort it out. During our little pre-show instructions, everything was fine. So it should be fine. It's, probably just a little weirdo, little glitch situation. Anyways, Rahla Xenopoulos. We'll have to give her another round of applause when she can hear it. Oh, thank you so much, you guys. Awesome reading from Rahla. And save your questions for the Q&A for Rahla when we have our Q&A at 8. But we need to welcome our second reader of the evening, our friend, Fairfield University MFA alum, T.E. Hahn, Tommy Hahn. Welcome, Tommy. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, it's great to be here.
It's so great to have you on the show. You were one of our first guests back when we started 2 years ago. You were, I think you were on FUMFA number 4, and now you're on show number 90. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm so glad you have continued this tradition. It's a wonderful resource for writers to connect with other writers. So thank you both.
Absolutely. And it's our pleasure, and it's been such a special way to keep in touch with people, to reconnect with people, and to meet MFAers that have come after us after we graduated. So we're so thankful for that. Anyways, Tommy, we don't want to delay your reading, but Chris, I think, will be the reader of your bio. So take it away, Chris.
Walt Whitman up there.
With the beard.
The bearded man.
Settle down, people. Settle down. We're getting the bio here. T.E. Hahn, otherwise known as Tommy, is the author of the Kirkus-Star awarded novel Open My Eyes. His fiction was nominated for the Best Small Fictions of 2021. He holds an MFA in fiction from where else? Fairfield University. And he is a research fellow and PhD student specializing in contemporary American short fiction at St. John's University. He teaches literature at Great Neck North High School and St. John's University in New York. His fiction and nonfiction are featured in Flash Fiction Magazine, Haunted Waters Press, Spry, The Puritan, Bright Lights Film Journal, Typishly, The Shakespeare Newsletter, and more. Tommy was a semi-finalist for a Norman Mailer Award, and he was recently accepted into the Minnesota Writers Conference to study under Benjamin Percy this summer. Congratulations there.
Thank
Woo!
you.
And we can't wait to hear you read, Tommy.
Take it away.
Thank you so much. Yeah, first, again, thank you to Katie and to Chris for inviting me back. Thanks to my wife for putting the kids to bed tonight. I know that's a challenge. And, I thought about maybe reading something I've published, but I've always wanted to read something as like a work in progress. So I thought I'd read a short story I haven't really sent out, but I'm going to read this one because this is actually the piece I submitted to get into that like highly selective writers conference this summer, and I got accepted. I think they liked it, so I figured I would give it a try. Okay, thanks again for everyone for coming. It's a short story, and it's called "It's All Fun and Games." One time, while my dad and I were arguing in the cold wake of our breaths, trying to restake the double life-sized inflatable fallen Santa Claus after an ice storm, my brother Mikey grabbed Santa's plump arm and mimicked a very merry masturbatory act right there on the front lawn while shouting, "Ride this sleigh, baby!" Mikey and I fell back into a pile of ice and snow and laughed until we cried. Dad concealed his smile by turning into the wind. Mom, from the second-story frosted window of our home, slapped the glass with her fingertips and cranked the window open, yelling her usual, "It's all fun and games, Mikey!" Because to Mikey, it was all fun and games. So when he arrived home from college in the middle of the night and asked me to take a road trip with him, I agreed. Although we had been close, there had always been a fine opaque layer between us, like a thin pane of fogged glass. I could only see the shadows and shapes of an indefinite, hermetically sealed world, leaving me guessing at what they might mean and who they might be. "Be quiet," Mikey whispered. "We have to leave tonight." He was holding the front door open with the toe of his left boot. "We have to leave now." "You just got back. It's 1 a.m. That's a 6-hour drive," I said, rubbing my strained eyes. The Jeep growled behind him, spewing smoke that veiled the driveway, headlamps silhouetting his body in the doorway like a mythical creature from beyond. "And don't you still have another couple weeks of classes? I know I do." "I finished early and..." He paused and listened to the sounds in the house, then lowered his voice as if hearing the creak of a bed spring. "I need help moving all my shit back home." The only other time I had taken a road trip with my brother was when we took a family trip to Aruba. We had rented a Jeep to explore gold mine ruins, but we got lost and found ourselves at a house with chicken bones hanging from rusted metal clotheslines and an open front door, like the house in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Mikey suggested pulling a Goldilocks and going inside to see if there was anything to eat, but luckily I was driving. But for the rest of the ride, Mikey couldn't stop talking about wishing he had stolen one of those chicken bones for what he called a memento mori. I didn't have the heart to correct his faux pas. "I have to be back by Sunday morning," I said. "I have to finish an essay on Murakami's Wind-Up Bird Chronicles for my contemporary surrealism class." "God bless you," he said with a raised eyebrow. "Now speak English, get dressed, and let's go." And before he turned toward his car, he said, "Let Mom and Dad sleep. I'll call them later." When I opened the Jeep's passenger door, Mikey was moving wrappers, empty soda bottles, and clothes off the seat and into the back of his car. He cleared just enough space for my body to sit among the layers of junk. "Hop in," he said. Only then did I notice Mikey's concave cheeks under the dim jaundice light bulb. The light vanished in the depths of his face's hollows. He had lost at least 10 or 15 pounds over the last semester. I sat and settled into the seat with a crunch. "You ever think about cleaning this car?" "What do you think I just did?" he said. "Now buckle up and shut up, bitch, if you can find the belt." When we arrived at the Long Island Expressway, he blasted Bob Marley's "Everything is Going to Be All Right." "It's a little loud," I said. "You need the volume at the same number of years you've lived." It was difficult to sleep with Mikey singing to No Woman, No Cry, and he replayed it 5 times before I asked him to turn it off. And he did turn it off. And he stopped singing immediately. He was sarcastic and funny, but he wasn't malicious. But even after Mikey turned the music off, it was almost impossible to rest. He used the brakes like Morse code. The trip was mostly highway from Long Island to upstate New York, a straight shot with the exception of a few tolls, no traffic at 1 a.m. But Mikey's brake gas technique made me want to puke into his empty Funyuns bag. Not to mention the car had the distinct stench of Mikey's spoiled cabbage-scented farts. My nose adjusted after the first hour, as it always did. I dozed at some point after the hutch until I rolled onto something with a crunch, a paper stuffed between the armrest and the seat. It was an essay Mikey had written on the wife of Bath for his medieval literature class. The first few pages were littered with red corrections, but no grade. My high school physics teacher used to write the grade on the last page so as to not embarrass students, but we always flipped to the last page anyway. Before I could find the grade, though, Mikey pulled it out of my hands. "Give me that," he said, throwing it in the back seat. "How'd you do?" I said. "That was just a draft. It didn't count." "How did you do on the final paper?" "I aced it." "What's your GPA?" "Maybe a 16, carry the 4. In middle and high school, Mikey struggled academically. One humid day at the end of his 9th grade year, our parents and his teachers had a meeting. I remember the day because Dad took off from his construction job. It was a big deal when that happened because as Dad had told us, there's no such thing as a day off when working construction. That's what Tylenol's for. When I asked Dad why he didn't just take Tylenol today, he said, "There isn't enough Tylenol in the world." Mom even made Dad dress in a collared shirt and tie for the meeting. When I arrived home from school that day, I overheard them talking with Mikey in the kitchen. Dad's tie was loosened and thrown over his shoulder. Mom, red-faced, repeated, "It's all fun and games, Mikey, until..." while Mikey leaned back in the kitchen chair with a smirk and his hands atop his head. When I asked Mikey about it later, he told me that they wanted to give him a Lifetime Achievement Award. While passing through Watertown, Mikey narrowed his eyes and elongated his neck, look out the window like a starved turtle reaching his head out of his shell for a crumb. "I met Corinne there." "Where?" I said, looking out my window. "At the Apollo, a diner, has kick-ass sweet potato fries." "You guys still together?" "No." "Why not?" I thought, she can't take a joke, and she likes the intellectual type. We finally reached the Lattice, New York town line, a small town a half hour from the Canadian border with a subpar liberal arts college at its center. The town was so small that some of the buildings on campus could be seen from its border. It was the only college to which Mikey had applied. He didn't want to do, quote, the community college thing that his guidance counselor suggested. It was considered 13th grade at our high school, where, Mikey had said, only drug dealers go for connections and special kids go for interactions. So Mikey announced that he would leave his future to fate. He went into school, stood in front of the New York State college map outside of his guidance counselor's office, blindfolded himself with a gym towel, spun around 4 times, and slammed his finger onto the map. After 8 or 9 attempts of his finger landing on places like NYU and Vassar, it finally landed on Lattice. "Can we grab something to eat?" I said. He looked over at me with wide eyes, as if I had asked him to drive the car through a shop window. "I was kind of hoping we can just get my stuff and get out." "Yeah, but don't you think I know. You haven't eaten breakfast at 7 a.m. You've gotten about an hour of sleep because I have a bipolar foot, and you have black lung disease from breathing in my gas chamber of a car." I was just going to say, I think you should call Mom and tell her, but yeah, all of those other things too. He smiled, but didn't laugh. He just slowed the car down and gazed through the windshield as if searching for an address. "Everything okay?" He didn't respond. He drove and searched. "Mikey? Well, stop. Quickly. Let's eat and get out of here. I want to beat traffic going home." We drove over a short concrete bridge wrapped in white Christmas lights and pulled into Kelsey's Pizza, where Mikey said they made orgasmic pizza rolls. They were open 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like most college students, Mikey and I could eat pizza at any hour of the day. We stepped inside and sat down at one of our 4 tables. "Small place," I said. "Most kids take out," Mikey whispered, ducking his head. "What's wrong?" "I don't want to talk to Marco. He doesn't shut up." Just then, a tan, middle-aged man from the back of the visible kitchen yelled, "Mikey, how are things?" Without turning to look at him, Mikey waved his hand in the air and rolled his eyes. "I'm alive, Marco." "Mikey, tell me a joke, funny man. Tell me one of your knock-knock jokes. What about the one on the cannibal on an island of missionaries?" Marco guffawed. Then he looked at me and said, "He's the funniest motherfucker I've ever met." For some reason, the profanity so early in the morning from a stranger made me wince. Mikey shook his head. "I can't go anywhere without being recognized." Marco approached our table and slapped Mikey on the back. "Mikey's a legend around here," he said. "Hey, Mikey, don't you have class?" No, Marco, I'm off today. I thought classes didn't end for another week or so. When the ache of awkward silence was too much for Marco to bear, he shrugged and said, "But what do I know, Mikey? I just make pizza." He returned to the kitchen. That's when Mikey leaned into me and whispered, "I hate when people call me Mikey. Did you know that? Makes me feel like a stupid kid." I had only seen this version of Mikey a few times before, like the time when we euthanized our black lab, Granite, about 5 years ago. His organs were shutting down. They couldn't find the cause. Probably cancer, the vet guessed. Mom couldn't bear to do it. Dad couldn't take a day off from work. So Mikey and I accepted the burden of walking Granite to the vet and placing him on the cold metal table in the room where pets go to die. "Your dog should see you as the last thing he'll see in the world," the pale vet tech said, moving his dreadlocks from one shoulder to the other. The veterinarian shook his head and said, "One of you should hold his body. He'll collapse after the injection." I didn't want to face Granite when they did it, so Mikey agreed to be the last thing Granite ever saw. I held Granite's warm body and looked away. "Ready?" the vet said. I nodded. Then the injection. Granite released one last groan and sunk into my arms as I pressed his body tightly against mine, as if draining all of the remaining air out of an inflatable mattress. "At least he's not in pain anymore," the vet tech said. Mikey didn't move. He sat in silence, staring at Granite's eyes that remained open well after his death. We ordered pizza rolls and sat back down at the table in silence once again until I said, "Why don't you call Mom now and let her know I'm with you?" Mikey paused for a moment and scratched his chin. "Fine." He stood, walked outside, and pressed the phone to his ear. He stared back at me, then spoke quickly, his breath a wavering veil visible in the cold air. Marco came to the table and asked if I needed anything. "No, thanks." "Mikey's the funniest guy I know," he said, walking back to the kitchen. "I know, he's my brother," I said under my breath. When I looked toward Mikey, he was gone. Instead, 3 girls walked in, laughing. "Marco's Angels! Good to see you, girls," Marco yelled from the kitchen. They greeted Marco with half smiles and a hello that sounded more like a goodbye. They took a seat in the booth next to mine, glancing over at me, whispering something to each other and laughing. I was the type of guy who required a more gregarious counterpart at parties, bars, and other social gatherings to blend in, to feel like someone who had something worth saying. I spoke jokes too softly for people to hear. I emphasized the wrong words and rushed punchlines. I forced uncomfortable laughs at others' jokes and laughed at what others didn't find funny. But Mikey always made me feel like someone others wouldn't want to party without. Our whole family knew of my awkwardness. In fact, one time when I was in 7th grade, our entire extended family convened for our annual Christmas dinner. And in the middle of the main course, our alcoholic Uncle Dom pointed at me and said, "I hear you have a little fear of pubic speaking." Everyone erupted into laughter, but Uncle Dom shushed us with a sharp, "Shut up, I'm talking." He continued to point at me with the mashed potato serving spoon and a glass of scotch in the other hand. "I'll bake you of that little fear," he said. "Recite the Lord's Prayer. Do it." Mom and I didn't say anything. Neither did any of my cousins or grandparents. So I looked at Mikey, who was sitting next to Grandma. As soon as he saw my face, he smiled and nodded. And then he farted. It was loud, it was wet, and it rattled the antique chair's plastic cover under him. In no time, Uncle Dom and the rest of the family scattered from the table with napkins pressed to their noses. Grandpa went to the hall closet to dust off the summer fan, to push the rotten cabbage stench out of the living room. And Mikey and I stayed in the stench together and laughed until we cried. After nearly 20 minutes, Mikey was still nowhere to be found, and Marco brought the pizza rolls to the table and said, "Enjoy," with a raised eyebrow at the empty space where Mikey had sat. I began to eat. Marco turned to the 3 girls next to me and said, "It's a rare occasion. You girls never stay to eat." "Had we known you'd be working, we would have ordered to go," one of the girls said with a constrained laugh. She had curly red hair, but it wasn't an orange or strawberry red. It was actually red, the kind only generated in a factory. One of the other girls took off her winter jacket, revealing a tattoo near her clavicle. esse quam videri. The third girl remained bundled and buried in her jacket. Then they began talking about a professor who was an excessively stringent grader, a woman by the name of Dr. Gerber. The name sounded familiar, and then I remembered seeing that name on Mikey's marked-up essay in the car, the medieval literature instructor. I walked to the door and peeked outside. Mikey wasn't anywhere to be found. His Jeep was still in the parking lot next to the girl's Ford. I sat back at the table and continued eating. "You looking for someone?" the tattooed girl said to me, smiling. Her friends were staring at me and smiling as well. My heart pumped so hard I could see it pulse in my eyes. "Aren't we all?" I said, and I immediately regretted it as it sounded too desperate and hackneyed. She widened her eyes to the rest of her friends who laughed awkwardly. They returned to their virtual worlds of likes, swipes, and tweets. The absence of words was filled with the clicking of nails on phone screens, and from the kitchen, the sound of sizzles and steam, and the metal scraping of brush on stovetop over and over. It was enough to drive a man mad with insecurity. But then Mikey returned out of breath. The girls looked up from their phones and began whispering again to each other. "What took you so long?" I said. "You know, Mom, always worrying. Let's get out of here." "But you don't even eat your pizza roll." "I'll take it to go," he said, glancing over at the girls. "We're leaving." They were staring at him. Then the reticent girl who had been bundled in her jacket unburied her mouth and said softly, "Hey, Mikey," in a voice like a toe dipping into water to test its temperature. Mikey didn't respond. He only gave a half smile without looking at her. I had never seen Mikey half smile, especially to a girl. It made the smile seem more like a twitch. When we arrived, the campus quad was abandoned. The benches, the library stone steps, the frost-glazed grass in the picnic area, everything was vacant. Everyone was tucked into heated classrooms and dorms. Mikey was silent while staring up at all of the buildings. He even stopped a few times to simply look around. When I asked him what he was doing, he said, "I'm going to miss this place." His breath was barely visible in the air now. "You sure you're not going to get in trouble for not attending class?" He turned sharply and stared straight into my eyes. "I told you already." Then he looked down at the ground. "Let's just go to my dorm and get my stuff. My roommate should be at class. Maybe I'll even let you bare-ass his pillow." He half smiled again, and so did I. We entered Brass Hall and climbed 3 flights of stairs that reeked of pot and sweat. When we arrived at his room, Mikey erased something with his hoodie sleeve that was written on the mini whiteboard nailed to the door. "Assholes," he mumbled while entering his room. His roommate's bed was made, his books were arranged in alphabetical order on shelves, and all of his clothes were neatly hung in the closet still. Mikey's side was bare. Everything was already packed. The bed was stripped. He had 3 boxes and 2 suitcases resting next to the bed. The room smelled of lavender, but a scent used to cover up something else, something subtle but slightly sour. Mikey shook his head and scanned the room like he did while walking through the quad, like he was making mental pictures of each section of the room. "Is this all you're taking?" I said. "Yeah," Mikey said, stacking the boxes one on top of the other. "Can you grab the suitcases and bring them down to the car? What about the bookshelf? What about your books? Don't you have more than this?" "I'm leaving the bookshelf. It's shit IKEA furniture." His voice was matter of fact, like he had decided this on the first day of classes. "Didn't Mom and Dad get you that? Hey, remember the time you jumped up? Can you just please stop talking and grab my stuff?" he said. Mikey wasn't funny anymore. He left the room, balancing the boxes against his chest as I tried grabbing the suitcases. But they were heavier than I had thought, and more than I could handle. I couldn't even imagine what he had packed. Soda? Snacks? Jokes? This was all I could think of, all I knew of him, and his jokes weighed more now than ever. After minutes of trying to find the best way to carry both, shoving, pulling, fumbling, Mikey returned. "What are you doing? All I needed you to do was just bring down the suitcases. They're heavy. I can't carry both." Mikey grabbed one, and I grabbed the other. I stood in the hallway as Mikey looked back in the room one last time. Then he let go of the hinge door with the toe of his boot. The sound of voices and footsteps slowly began to fill the hallway, like someone slowly raising the volume of life. And in moments, before we could reach the stairwell, dozens of students crowded the corridor. Everyone slowed and stared at my brother and me, but mostly at Mikey. Some whispered, some laughed, some just stared, blank-faced. One kid yelled, "Oh, so close, Mikey," followed by laughter. "Not laughing now," another kid said. I turned with a clenched fist, but I didn't see who said it. Someone cursed at the ones who were laughing. And as we approached the stairwell, a girl in a lattice sweatshirt who resembled the Corinne that Mikey had dated and posted on Facebook laid her hand on his shoulder and mouthed a soft, "Michael?" But he shook the hand off and barreled ahead of me through the crowd. I couldn't see his face, but from behind him, it felt as if I were holding a part of Mikey's agony in that suitcase. An agony I remember from so many years ago when Mom had tried to help him with his writing at the dining room table, and Mikey cried and kept me awake all night. It made my stomach ache to hear my brother sob. Even with my head under the pillow, his cries were like distant sirens that left me guessing at what had happened and to whom it had happened. And Mom had always told Mikey and me that if you hear a siren, you should say a prayer, especially if you don't know what happened or to whom it had happened. And so during those nights, I prayed for my brother, or the boy I knew as my brother, and his invisible wound. We arrived at the car, loaded the suitcases silently, and drove off. The entire time while driving through the parking lot, down the narrow side street of the town, and past Kelsey's pizza shop, I only wondered what joke Mikey planned to tell Mom and Dad to mitigate the news that he had failed out of college. When we approached the bridge, we crossed coming into the town. Mikey pulled to the side of the road before crossing and shut the engine off. We sat there in silence for a long time. I couldn't recall ever being in a space with my brother with this much silence. My stomach felt like a soaked towel being wrung dry. "Want to hear a joke?" he whispered. I didn't respond. "Knock, knock." I remained silent. "Knock, knock," he repeated louder than before, looking out the windshield. I didn't feel like joking. I didn't feel like laughing. I could have gone a lifetime without hearing laughter. And it was only now that I understood Mom's frustrations, not anger, but sadness. Each joke, each laugh the two of us had shared over the years had not been shared. Instead, the very breath from our laughter had been only further fogging the glass between us. "Knock, fucking knock. What the fuck is wrong with you?" he yelled, grabbing the steering wheel and slamming his clenched fist over and over onto the dashboard. "It's a joke. You have to answer the fucking door to get the joke, asshole. Answer the fucking door," he yelled, now turned toward me with a clenched fist, as if ready to throw it at my head, but he only stared at me with wet eyes. From the sun, in the silence, the cracking of frost and ice on the windshield was barely audible. Then Mikey unclenched his fist, took a deep breath, placed his hands around his skull, and rested it onto the steering wheel, releasing a long, slow exhale, finally exhausted from years of laughing. The end. Thanks, everyone.
Tommy! Oh, you cracked me up and then you broke my heart.
Not the best way.
So good.
Thanks.
Gosh.
You guys are kind.
Wow.
No, you got everything in there. You got the road trip. You got the brothers. You get. I mean, you got pizza rolls.
Jokes, the
You get all the
memories.
bases.
I mean, it's not. You can't get better than pizza rolls, right?
I mean, yeah.
Like, doesn't every story have a pizza roll? They say that about grief, but I think it's really about pizza rolls.
It should. It
Well,
should.
and farts too. I mean, I
Yeah.
love stories with at least 2 mentions of hilarious farts. Tommy, that was so powerful and so beautiful and so funny and so poignant, and I was so with you, and my heart is so broken now, but that was just so vivid and fabulous, and it sounded so T.E. Hahn, your other pieces that I've heard, and when you've read from your novel, also just these really powerful family scenes, these scenes of young people, and they're complex, emotions. Sometimes we see teenagers, we see college kids, we're like, we know what kind of thing we're gonna get from that. But no. We have all of these layers, and you really capture that. Absolutely fabulous, Tommy.
Thanks. That's like overly kind. Thank you.
No,
it's true.
I'm working on a whole series of stories about two brothers, and it was actually really great for me to hear that, because it's
awesome.
Because
awesome.
I mean, it's such fertile territory. So
yeah, I'm selling the story for a low price. No, I'm kidding. It's
we'll talk after.
Yeah, was it?
That's so great. That's so great.
Well, when we bring Rahla up here.
Yes, and Rahla has audio. She can hear us. She can see us. We can all hear each other. And it is time to get ready for our Q&A with Tommy Hahn and Rahla Xenopoulos. Get your cues in that chat, and we will get started. Rahla, welcome back.
Thank you. What a stunning piece. Wow, Tommy.
I was just going to say the same about you, actually. Oh, my God, it was so good.
Yours was. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a night. And both readings that we heard tonight mentioned Bob Marley songs. Did they not, Chris? Did you catch that?
There's a theme for the evening.
We planned that. We planned that beforehand. Naturally.
Sure.
Well, and we always find we do our best to make wonderful combinations with our readings, but sometimes it ends up being like, well, who is available when? And we're just so excited to have both people. No matter what the situation is, we always find a beautiful, serendipitous connection between the readings during the reading time. And I think just such vivid and complex characters, a level of melancholy and memory, and also Bob Marley songs.
Yes, the youth, just the tough lives of people at a certain age and dealing with, whether they're, national, very intense life and death issues, or just, family issues that feel like life and death when they're happening.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, before we get started, we already have questions popping up. We have our famous first question, but let's just give a round of applause for Rahla Xenopoulos and T.E. Hahn. Woo! Rahla, now you can hear our applause.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So keep sending your questions. We will get to them. But Chris, can you kick us off with our famous first question?
Yes, I can. It seems like forever since we've done this, because we've had all these, open mic nights and what have you. Yeah. But yes, this first question, we'll start with Rahla. How has being a writer how has writing changed your life?
It's such a massive question.
Yeah, that is a big question. I always say that I was a waitress, and waitressing was probably more fulfilling and definitely financially lucrative. There's a huge part of me that wants to say becoming a writer meant that I was going to never make any money for the but there's another part of me that feels like it's given me an escape. I think reading is the greatest escape humanity. I really do. And I think there's a Junot Diaz quote where he says, the only actual form of telepathy is fiction. And I feel like I have a connection with people when they've read my books and they've brought something different to the characters. And so it has given me a profound faith and connection in humanity.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yes.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
Very awesome answer.
And
Tommy?
I have to follow that. For me, it's the opposite. I don't mean to change the question, but for me, it's more like, how has the writing changed? How's the life changed my writing more than anything? I just think that for me, it seems to be the opposite way. And I think that as I've kind of grown as a human, as a teacher, especially as a dad.
Yeah.
Like I feel things that I had never felt before, you know.
Oh,
And I don't think I could have written something like that prior to a certain point in my life, or I don't know,
mm,
had I don't know if it would have been as accurate, or I don't know, I'm not sure, but I think for
mm,
me it's sometimes the other way around that I've
mm.
noticed.
Well, do you think, and Rahla can address this too, but do you think being a writer, because you were a writer, we knew each other in the program and everything before you had kids, and how's do you think being a writer influenced how you are a parent?
That's a
Other than
good
like
question.
reading at night just probably has a little more meaning for a writer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely much more selfish. I stiff arm my children when I have to. No, I think it's made me more reflective. Like I think that the
Mm.
more I write, the more reflective I think I become, and
Yeah,
then I think being
totally.
reflective is like really important for being an imperfect dad, because you're constantly making mistakes, or even as a teacher,
Yeah,
consistently like revising and reflecting. I think it's
yeah,
the reflection component for me that's the most helpful. That and talking to myself too. Like I'm
Mm.
constantly in my own head, sometimes too much, and and I think like it's a nice break as well when I'm not writing, because it's
Yes.
so it's very claustrophobic, and I get obsessive
Yeah.
with it, and
Mm, mm.
I could go like people binge drink and such. Like I binge write, and like people won't see me. I'll be miserable when I'm in there, and I like don't want to be bothered, and it's terrible. So
Tommy, I just have this memory, and some people can correct me if
oh no.
if I'm missing a detail, but I believe the first residency that we met you, like I don't know, like 10 years ago. Oh God, um, I think you during the residency, you not only were going to have like your workshops and go to all the seminars, but you bought a printed out stack of your manuscript at the time, and I believe you like had it all over your like little dorm room on the island. And
Oh
didn't you
yeah.
have like sticky notes like all over the wall too?
Yeah, I had note cards. Well, I was trying to figure this shit out because, like, the
I love
novel,
it.
I would never do this again, I don't think, but I just kind of wrote my way into the novel without planning a thing. And I was like,
Oh,
this is going to be great. This is what artists do. And then it was a nightmare. Later, I had to like piece it together, and it was supposed to be like a fractured kind of narrative in some ways,
yeah,
but yeah, and I just, but yeah, and Scott, you remember Scott Schilling and
of
Stephanie Harper. They
course,
might be on here, but they kept
Scott.
trying to get me out to like the bars and everything. I'm like, I can't. I gotta figure this shit out. Like everything had to be figured out that night. It
I
was like
remember.
that's just how I get. It's That's my wife.
Right. Yes.
You know.
So that's so interesting. That's so interesting, Tommy. We love asking this question. We always get just like fascinating and very, very massive answers. We know it's kind of an impossible question because I think that kind of the go-to answer is like, well, how has writing changed my life? It has been my life in so many ways. It's been my form of expression. It's been my creative outlet. It's been something that has enabled me to reflect and capture all these different moments and build these worlds that it's done so much. It's so hard to answer that question, but it's always so great to hear the answers that everyone shares. We have a fabulous question in the chat, though, and I feel that both of you can answer this one because you are both teachers. So, Brian Hartwig says, thank you both for sharing your work. Tommy, your piece had such a distinctive voice. What advice could you share for student writers to develop their own voices? And since both of you are teaching, actively teaching, writing in your own ways, I would love to hear an answer from both of you. Rahla, would you mind sharing an answer for this one first? What advice would you share for student writers or emerging writers to develop their own voices?
I feel very strongly that characters drive stories,
Mm.
and that you have to know your character. You don't have to love them, you don't have to like them, but you have to know what their grandmother had for breakfast in 1942.
I love it.
That confidence in the people you're writing about, you can move things around and you can be very fluid, and you're telling their stories. You have their voices.
That's right.
And when you know them to the point that they're haunting you, then your voice then your writer's voice becomes much more lucid and clear, I think.
Right.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense given what you read tonight, because I felt like I really knew that character just from those, not very many pages that you read tonight, and you had to have known that character very well to write that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I never felt like there were sometimes I'm listening, even like, because I think listening to stories is like a different experience, obviously. And I never felt like unconfident with you as like you. I always felt like I was in good hands at every step.
Yes.
Like you had like mastery of language and character and plot. It was so easy to follow for that reason.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, hands down, like you.
Oh yeah.
God.
Thank you.
And so, Tommy, what advice for student writing? And this serves as our pearl of wisdom tonight.
It kind of does,
Right.
yes.
What advice could you share for student writers to develop their own voices?
Two things. The first thing, kind of what Rahla said before, knowing your characters. I mean, even with short stories, I'll talk to the characters in my head for a long time. Like before I write a word, usually I may like write notes, but I will have whole conversations in my car ride to work and in the shower, and like you'll see me walking around the house talking to myself. Ask my wife, like my kids, they're like, "Who are you talking to?" Like, just leave me alone. I got this. I'm talking to this guy. It's like my next character. But I'm not. I sound like an abusive father.
Stop it.
Informing them and leave me alone, children. I love them dearly.
I know.
The other thing is the sad part that I've seen as a teacher is there's such an overwhelming muting and muffling and suppressing of individual quirky voices of the students themselves sometimes, where even like just writing instruction, typical writing instruction in America is so much like it's this way and you have to adhere to these things. And I think that does a disservice, because then when they get to like a creative writing course or whatever, they
what's the formula,
right? And they sound sound like everyone else too. Like all the characters sound like other people's characters because they've been trained to like follow just this way of writing. And I think I'm not perfect at this, but when I find a student, even in an academic paper, who has a real unique kind of style or syntax or whatever it may be, I encourage that. Like I try to encourage that as much as possible and say, hey, have you ever written fiction or poetry or,
that's great.
Because I think that it gets silenced slowly over the years. We tell kids to not say that or do that or use those words or that kind of punctuation here, only in this context. It's like, it's so restricting,
Yeah.
Totally. Right. Absolutely.
You get your opening, you got to state your thesis.
Right.
And, first paragraph. And then you
right, exactly.
General information thesis.
Yeah,
topic sentence.
Yep. Set up your quotations, blend them, cite them, analyze them.
Yeah.
Repeat. And look, I do that again to teach writing, academic writing. I do that myself.
You need that.
Of course, there's certain things we use, but I think there's a time and place too to remind them that it's okay to be yourself as well.
Absolutely. And even within like the 5-paragraph essay, there are ways to, make wonderful word choices, to have an interesting voice, to choose to read and to focus on and to research things that are really interesting to you, and not just do what you think is what the teacher necessarily wants to hear. Follow the instructions, learn what you need to learn, but like develop that voice even then, and not just in like the 2-week creative writing section of high school,
Right. Yeah.
Well, learn the rules and then break them.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Oh, I absolutely love it. I want to go. There is a wonderful question. There is a wonderful question in here, but I have a question for both of you before we run over to that. And that is just like, how did each of you like come to writing? Did it start as being like quite a reader as a child? Did you start writing a story one day when you were a teen and say, I need to follow this? Was there particular inspiration? How did you really get started, with writing? Rahla?
I always tell my students, so I was a high school dropout. I have major dyslexia and remedial problems. And those are the least of my psychiatric concerns. But because I was so dyslexic, I came to reading very late in life.
Wow.
I was very privileged that I grew up in a family where reading was everything. So I grew up listening to my mother reading, and she didn't look around. It was like you read the classics. So when I was 4, I was getting grades, Great Expectations. So I had a genuine appreciation of literature, and I took cognizance of how valuable it was in a person's life. And then when I was 36, a friend said to me, I'm going to a writing workshop. Will you come with me? And I was like, dude, have you ever looked at me? I don't know where to put a full stop. And she said, just come as my writing buddy. And I went to chat with her, and the teacher was just such an extraordinary woman. And the other people who sat with me on the workshop, and I still work with some of them, were so amazing and so loving and really encouraged. And the minute on that day, the minute I picked up the pen, I knew, I kind of was like, oh, this is
for me.
This is what I do in my home. And then I was very privileged as I went along to have amazing editors and people who held me and coerced me through it. Which is not to say I enjoy it, but that's how I came to it.
Rahla, that's incredible. That's incredible. And you have now this incredible list of publications, awards, all these different wonderful teaching experiences, as a writer. And it all kind of, it's awesome that it stemmed from just a really welcoming and encouraging workshop experience where you were like, oh yes, like this is definitely what I want to do. And not to say that it's easy at all, but that you found it at that place, and here you are. That's really incredible.
I feel very strongly that there is, if you have a moral duty to a story, firstly, unwritten characters go feral inside your head, and none of those fuckers rattling around. They sit on the pages of books. But I think if you feel a sense of moral duty, you don't have to like your own writing. You can go like, this story needs to be told, and I don't care if I'm writing it well or not. I'm putting it out there.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I came.
You're following that kind of move of the spirit, the urge to write, and the feeling and the trust, the belief that this is important, this needs to be said, this needs to be heard, and I'm putting it out there in the world. And I know that feeling that something that needs to be written but isn't being written just makes you go crazy. I like how you said the characters go feral in your mind. That's like so quotable. I love it. What about you, Tommy? How did you first come to writing? When did you have that moment of like, yes, this is something I'm really going to do and commit myself to?
I think it started before I knew I wanted to write. I think I always gravitated toward really like great storytellers. And my dad is I just remember him telling stories and how funny he was and how engaging, like at parties, he would, kind of spin a tale about like work, how funny, like just, he was incredible and still is. And I was always gravitated toward like the stories he and others like in my family would tell. And then as I got older, I was like a little punk rocker and I was like, wrote emo poetry, and then the emo poetry, like I thought they were wonderful, of course, like every emo. And I go to college and I took like a creative writing class and joined like the creative writing group called the Society of Writers. And this professor, Adam Penna, was just inspiring as hell and so encouraging. And I was just like, if I could do this forever, I'm cool. Like that, I'm good with that if I can do that. That's kind of how
awesome.
It started.
I love that.
And then poetry couldn't I just felt like I moved from poetry to fiction because it was like too limiting. I always have too much to say.
I get it.
So yeah.
Very, very good.
Great.
You know, and that's kind of funny because earlier today when we were at Victoria's book launch, Victoria said, you know, that she was moving in some ways into writing more poetry, and I was like, Chris, she's coming to the dark side because Chris, you know, will you know, he loves poetry, of course, but
Right.
he'll tease me. He'll be like, oh, poets, whatever. So now we have another person who has gone the other way from poetry to fiction. So Chris, we're even now. We're even now, Chris.
Well, in all fairness, I mean, I still read a lot of poetry. I
Of
love like
course,
I'm
no.
super inspired by poets and like the language, the attention to detail. Every word freaking matters. Like you take one word
Yes,
out and it's not the same. And I want my fiction to be that way. And that's why I like flash
yes.
fiction or micro fiction too, because it's
Awesome.
got like both worlds. It's like a hybrid between the two that I love. So um
We have a hilarious comment from
uh,
your wife in here. Too much to say, you. Oh, that's too good. I'm sorry, I had to.
I love
Kelly, we
Ashley. I
love you.
really
We love you in your many words.
she gets me.
I love that so much.
She
That's too
gets
good.
you.
She's
Oh,
awesome.
and you know, we just it's so great to see you, Tommy. We have so many fabulous memories back on the island and you know, early on the show. So
Mm.
great to hear this piece. And this is the piece, is this the piece that you submitted for this experience that's coming up, right?
Yeah, it's the only place I thought to submit it because I finally felt like it was close to being finished, and so that's when I submitted it for that workshop. They take like 12 people,
That's
and yeah,
awesome.
so
That is really, really awesome, Tommy. We're so excited for you.
Great.
We have a question in here from Jamie. It says, Tommy, I enjoyed the balance of humor and pain. And I noticed that you balanced a lot of flashbacks to move the story forward. How did you strike that? How do you strike that balance? Is it all intuitive?
hmm. That's Matt Blackstone's my chairperson. He's great. He's a published writer as well. He
Mhm.
actually was one of the few who has seen this piece and gave me some feedback on it.
Oh,
So
wow.
thank you, Matt. Like,
Oh, okay. This is from
thanks for
Matt.
the really tough question, buddy. That's no, it's a good question because so often we think of flashbacks or backstory or any type of exposition. There's a lot of ways of offering exposition, as we know in a work of fiction, but it can weigh the story down. It could give like sometimes that like little mid story or a partial story sag, and we feel if we're
Mm,
too far in the past and we forget about what's happening in the present, or we don't get cues like easily
mm,
transitioning from the past to the present and back.
Hmm.
It's tricky, but yeah, for me, I think most of the scenes are intuitive initially of
right.
where I want to stop, and I feel like we just need a little bit of context or clarity or something else. And I try to spend as little time in the past as possible. Like
Mm,
I love stories that are just very immediate and present and constantly moving forward and always
right, right.
building tension.
Mm,
And so if I'm in the past, I should be doing more than one thing than just
right.
like, oh, by the way, he did this in the past. You know, it should be developing character and
Yes,
also
yes, yes.
complicating the conflict and also moving the story forward and clarifying motivation. And so it's actually tougher not to pick the moment when I think I should offer some backstory or flashback, but more
Right,
like what memory, moment, or thing to reveal and how much for me. That's
right.
always like the toughest part. And sometimes I don't get it. I usually I spend too little time. I tend to be an underwriter first, and then I go in and
Yes.
pry open scenes and such. But
Very cool. That's so interesting, Tommy. That's really, really
Yeah.
interesting. I like your goals there that you don't want to like weigh the story down. You want it to be just right. You want to
Yeah.
keep it moving forward, but that you want the weight of it, but just enough, not too much.
right, and
Well,
it has to be like the thing that we need there.
Yes.
So that's hard. And
and
I hate reading a story and like we go into the past and I'm like, where the hell are we now? Are
yeah.
we still in the past? Are we in the present? Like, how long are we staying here? Like, why don't we just let's start it at the beginning and then move forward chronologically? Why go to the past 100 times? But then again, that's just a stylistic thing. That's not
It
wrong or
is, it
right.
is, it is. And that's very interesting. I get that. I get that, and I can see that in your writing. I think you strike a really good balance with that. Rala, what would you say about flashbacks? About kind of building your timeline? How do you think about that? How do you plan that? What are your main goals when you're kind of moving through time in your story?
Right. Well, Rala, you're working on a bigger canvas because you're working on a
Yes.
novel. So and it happened here tonight. I mean, we have the character in London, and then we have this whole scene back in the day, and then we come back. So,
Yes.
like, do you find that you, like, when you revise, or do you say, well, that doesn't belong here, that belongs over there, or does it just the intuition is right?
No, I'm usually a hot mess. There are not many rules and laws. The last book that I wrote covered 10 centuries, and went through various continents. And on that, my editor was like, he said, you need to give me a synopsis. And he said, I cannot submit that. They won't publish this book. I have to stand up in front of the board and say, this is what she's doing. I need a synopsis. And I was like, I can't. And eventually, and he said, it's got to be less than 2 pages. And eventually a friend of mine who's an editor said, tell me the story. I will type up the synopsis.
I love it.
And I gave it to him, and he went like, okay, now you know what's going on.
Oh,
I knew I was going to publish it, but you needed to know that in the 10th century, she's in Ethiopia, and you needed to know in the 16th century, they're in India. So that was, and I find often if you write a poem about a piece you're writing, that gives you the holding structure.
See, poetry solves everything, Chris.
Yeah. I think
I love this, Rahla.
Can give a person a synopsis. I think if you take all your prose and you extract prompts, you can literally crystallize it. But yeah, I'm usually messy, and I wish I had the intention. That was the one that I went like, this happens here and that happens there. Otherwise, it's generally messy.
We love that. We love hearing the different approaches and how they work. You know, they kind of go through these different processes. You have different people sharing with you, different people editing you, different people giving you this guidance, and you have this push and pull and this beautiful journey. We love all the different ways to getting to an incredible finished piece. So that's really cool to hear, Rahla. We love it. We love it.
However you get there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, before we feel like we have already, asked you our pearls of wisdom question, but before we get to our famous last question, I am dying to know, Rahla, you have, I believe, lived and taught on several continents now, and I'm dying to ask you what that experience has been like, and how that is also captured in your writing. And then Tommy, on your end, I know that you are studying. Well, your dissertation is on really contemporary American fiction, and that seems to be what you are also really focusing on, at the moment. So I'm really interested in how you're kind of capturing your various places in your writing, and how that's going, how you're feeling about it. Rahla, and then Tommy.
Yeah, I love teaching. I absolutely, I love writers, and I love working. I think, again, my beloved editor always says that if he has a problem, he takes it to a writer, because a writer is trained to look at every situation from every aspect. And I don't say that all writers are nice people. I've known some really nasty ones. But when you're in workshop, I think you see the deepest, most profound truths of humanity. And at that stage, there is just, again, it goes back to that deep, intrinsic sort of soul-to-soul connection. Like, you can't put up a facade. You have to just be who you are and telling your authentic story. So I feel every person I teach has been a great heartfelt privilege for me.
Yes.
And that does, be they in Greece or Cape Town, or funny enough, my workshop in New York, the people in that workshop have given me such faith in us as a species. And
I love that. Chris says this all the time.
Coming here as an immigrant, I didn't know from Americans, but seeing the writers in workshops has been like, you're the same as people all the world, and you're kind. So teaching gives me a great faith. And I think going through COVID as a species, we've needed to see one another's souls. We've needed that connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Rahla. What about you, Tommy? What about you kind of capturing this contemporary American life in your writing, and how do you feel about that? And also, you're teaching high school. That, how does that influence what's going on in your writing?
I think Rahla pointed something out that is so true. Like there was like a moment, I think, at least for me personally, growing up, probably the defining moment of when I was like, this is me and adult. Like I'm coming of age, like it's like classic moment, but like I'm an adult is when I realized that, like, I always felt as a kid and in high school and such that I had to kind of either be like a kid or become an adult, right? And it was just like this eschewing all of the things of childhood and moving on, and all the stories that sort of talk about that. And the greatest moment for me growing up as a student and as a human was like, I can still be a teacher and an academic and still like wear all black and have tattoos and be a punk rocker. And like I was like, why can't I just be both? Like, and I can, and I do. Like, that's just, those are things I love. And why can't I just be like that person in one? But anyway, yeah, in terms of like contemporary fiction, yeah, I mean, my dissertation is my
Sorry,
no, I'm just like in like I've been doing it, and I'm still doing it, and I'm gonna hopefully defend it in October of this year. Knock on wood. Hopefully, and so I'm getting there. So I'm in the middle, and like I'm sick of it, but I also love it. What I found that I love the most about reading short fiction, especially, is just the heightened ambiguity as a result of like the brevity of a short story.
Right.
And I think that a lot of the short story writers I love, like, Amy Bender, Tobias Wolff, and Benjamin Percy, and are so hyper aware of that ambiguity, and they use it just right and just enough. And to me, short stories are more like real life than any other genre. Because I feel like everything's like fractured and fragmented, and there's pieces, and like it's when people are like, oh God, I gotta be whole, I gotta find myself, or I gotta like make myself whole again. It's like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? Like, I never got that when someone said like, oh, I gotta get back to being whole. Like, when were you ever whole?
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
It's so true.
Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I've just never felt like I think
so authentic, right?
Yeah, I feel like it's more real to be like, like we get pieces of things, we get parts of ourselves, and we get some of it, not others, and
right. And even like within an episode, like just like this moving the brother out of the college dorm, that there are so many other memories and moments and feelings and kind of these acquaintance characters that kind of come in and out. And that's so authentic to our lives, like you spend 15 minutes in the life of someone, and there are all these memories and all these other things that are happening, and it's very kind of fractured, like you said, and that aspect makes it very authentic, because you can have kind of a beginning, middle, and end to something, but there are all these other pieces involved in it. And I think you're absolutely right that short stories are able to capture that in a really really special way, a really authentic way.
And you can live with someone forever and like never really know them, like it's just like it's so straight, it's so odd, we kind of sometimes get comfortable in roles, and those roles are just like one of many facades or personas or whatever,
So true, Tommy. That is so great. But we need to ask our famous last question really quick. Normally it's a two-parter, and we ask for a pearl of wisdom and a book recommendation, but Chris, over to you. You're the last question.
Well, yeah, I think we've already addressed the pearl of wisdom. You guys had great advice for young writers, so So, Rala, what's a book recommendation? Just like off the top of your head, something that's floated your boat lately, or meant something to you that you
Read
can.
the classics, like go back to the classics. And I have to say, I went back to the during lockdown, I went to all the Russian classics.
Oh,
The most glorious escapism, because I would be listening to Brian Lay on the radio and he would be saying, so many people died, blah, blah. And I'd be like, yes, dear, but you know that so-and-so is fucking so-and-so in the parlor. I mean, no, I do. I think like I just reread Crime and Punishment, and it made me question my own morality and my own value system. And so, yeah, go back to the classics. That's my
love it.
Which translation did you read? Because there's like the old school one that everybody read for a long time, and then there's newer ones and stuff.
I'm guessing that I read the old one because it was the same one that was on my bookshelf from when I first read it.
Yeah.
As a young person. Yeah, in my late teens, but yeah.
Oh yeah, so that's probably classic, probably the classic one that we all read.
Yeah,
back in the day.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Rahla. Tommy.
What? Oh,
recommendation.
Sorry. I would say, I mean, I have to now go with anything by Benjamin Percy. Like, he's got a trilogy out. His novels I haven't read. I've been focused on his short stories, but I mean, he's got 3 fantastic collections called The Language of Elk. That was his first one, through Carnegie Mellon Press, I think. And that was like in 2007. And then he came out with Refresh. That was his sort of groundbreaking short story collection that was published in things like in the Paris Review and GQ and all that. And then his most recent short story collection, which is just as haunting and excellent, is called Suicide Woods, which is titled after Suicide Woods, the short story, which is probably one of my favorite short stories of all time.
Oh my God.
It's just really dark and beautifully written. And anyway, but
and you get to hang with him.
Yeah. They had like a thing where you could kind of submit your work based on like literary promise to get a out of the 12 spots, they offered 6 to get a one-on-one 30-minute writing manuscript consultation with him, and I got it. So I'm like, I'm stoked. I am so excited for this summer, man. I can't even tell you.
Oh, Tommy, we should have you back. We want to hear a report out. Like, we want to hear everything that happened and how wonderful it was. That sounds so amazing. That is so great. Well, anyways, thank you both so much. Another round of applause for Rahla Xenopoulos and Tommy Hahn.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were both absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for your readings. It was such a pleasure to get to spend this time with you, asking you these questions and just learning more, just sharing more. You're both so amazing, and we wish you the best of luck with everything. We hope to have you back sometime soon. Thank you so much to our audience. Have a fabulous night. And Chris will be back next week with...
Oh my God, it's screenwriter night.
Woo!
And Michelle Miller, who will be sharing readings with real live breathing actors.
Nice. It's going to be awesome. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much, Rahla and Tommy.
Thank you.